My name is Celeste. On the day my father was laid to rest in the midst of sorrow, my younger sister, Savannah, leaned over and whispered, "Poor you, almost 40 and still alone. Meanwhile, I have a husband, a mansion, everything." Her words cut straight into my heart, right there in front of all our relatives. But I didn't shed a tear. I smiled softly and asked, "Savannah, have you met my husband?" The moment he stepped forward, Savannah's face turned pale, her hands trembling, because she knew exactly who he was. Have you ever been betrayed by the person you loved most? Would you choose revenge? Or choose happiness so they'd have to pay their own price? Leave a comment and share your thoughts with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next episode. Back then, I was 33, living through what I thought were the most fulfilling years of my life. I was engaged to Daniel Carter, a young businessman who seemed to have it all: an up-and-coming career, charming looks, and a presence that made people trust him from the very first meeting. Daniel entered my life like a breath of fresh air. He was a man my father adored. I still remember the first evening Daniel came over for dinner. My father pulled out a chair to seat him beside him and poured him a glass of rare whiskey he usually saved only for special occasions. Beneath the warm golden lights, my father smiled proudly. "Celeste, you are very lucky. This man understands the value of family." Looking at Daniel back then, I saw confidence and pride in his eyes. I believed, just like my father, that I had found a worthy life partner. Savannah, my younger sister, was also at the dinner table. She wore a striking red dress, her blonde hair curled elaborately, her face perfectly made up as if she were attending a gala rather than a family meal. Savannah beamed, raised her glass, and praised Daniel endlessly. "You're so fortunate, Celeste. Daniel is both intelligent and refined. I've never seen anyone suit you so well." I believed all of it. I believed that after so many years, my sister and I could finally be happy together, without competing or comparing. I was wrong. In the days that followed, Savannah showed interest in every detail of my relationship. She asked where we met, our future plans, even offered to help pick wedding invitations and suggested decor ideas. I thought it was simply the excitement of a little sister wanting to share in my joy. Until one evening, while I was making dinner in my apartment, my phone suddenly buzzed with a message from Daniel's number. "I'm tired of everything. I don't think we're right for each other. Maybe I need someone who understands me better." I called him right away, but only heard the cold, automated reply, "The number you have reached is currently unavailable." That night, I sat frozen, staring at the text. Fear flooded my heart. Had everything been an illusion? The next day, Daniel showed up at my office as if nothing had happened. He smiled and kissed my cheek. "Celeste, are you okay? You look pale." I showed him the message on my phone. He looked truly shocked. "I never sent that. I was in a meeting with clients all last night." I was confused. If it wasn't him, then who? That question haunted me for days. I started to doubt everything. Time passed and strange messages kept coming. Once I received another text from Daniel's number. "I'm tired of our evenings together. Savannah is much more exciting." When I confronted him, Daniel insisted he didn't send it. But suspicion grew like a crack in glass, creeping between us. I started interrogating him. He became irritable, worn out. Our once sweet love turned into tense, cold days. One night, I decided to face Savannah. I handed her my phone, my voice trembling. "Do you know anything about this? Someone is trying to destroy me and Daniel." Savannah widened her eyes and gently touched my shoulder, her face full of sympathy. "Sis, do you really think I'd do that? I would never dare. But you should be careful. Men change quickly." In her eyes, a flicker I couldn't quite name appeared. Not worry, but a hidden happiness. I ignored it. Not until the truth hit me did I understand. At the party where Daniel announced his new project, I arrived with my father. In that luxurious space, I watched Daniel hold Savannah's hand and publicly declare, "This is the woman I love, the one who will stand beside me in everything." My father was stunned, squeezing my arm tightly. I could barely stand, my mind blank. Savannah didn't look at me, but her lips curved into a victorious smile. Right then, every piece fell into place. Savannah had forged the messages. She had planted doubt and torn my trust apart. And Daniel had chosen her without hesitation. The humiliation of that day was beyond comparison. In front of friends, partners, and my own father, I became the abandoned one, an outsider in my own life. I left the party, walking away from whispers, music, and the pitying glances of relatives. My father said nothing on the drive home. When the car stopped in front of the house, he placed a hand on my shoulder and said gently, "Celeste, sometimes betrayal is the way life shows you who truly deserves you. Don't let this pain define you." I nodded as tears streamed down my face. From that moment, I knew I had to leave everything behind and begin again. I left my hometown just days after Daniel chose Savannah. Everything happened so fast I barely packed anything. A few rushed suitcases, a couple of boxes of books and clothes, and what little money I had left in my bank account. I drove overnight from Oregon to Seattle, a nearly 4-hour drive that felt like the longest journey of my life. In the dark, unfamiliar road signs appeared then vanished, as if I were severing every last thread tying me to my past. Seattle greeted me with gray rain. I rented a tiny apartment in Capitol Hill, an old building with wooden stairs that creaked under every step. The unit was barely over 400 square feet, with stained walls and a narrow window overlooking a cramped alley where stray cats fought over scraps. The living room and bedroom were one and the same. A folding bed took up half the space. The kitchen was tiny, the sink chipped. The bathroom was damp, the mirror cracked in the corner. I felt like I had hit rock bottom. At first, I tried to make it feel like home. I bought a few small paintings from a flea market and placed a cactus on the windowsill. But nothing could cover the emptiness. Every night, the sound of rain on the roof and traffic outside jerked me awake. I lay still, eyes wide in the darkness, wondering how I had gone from a bride-to-be my father believed in, to a single woman sitting alone in a run-down room in a strange city. Days blurred together. I took any odd job I could find to survive. Handing out flyers, cleaning cafes, doing temporary data entry for a small company. Every dollar I made had to be carefully measured. Rent, utilities, a bit of cheap food. Some days I ate cereal for all 3 meals just to save money. But the hardest moments came unexpectedly. I remember passing the wedding ring display at a supermarket. Cold white lights shone on diamond bands like the one Daniel once gave me. I stopped, my heart tightening. A young couple beside me held hands, smiling as they tried on rings. I couldn't take it. I turned away, letting a tear slip down my cheek, wiping it quickly before anyone noticed. Moments like that brought the memories rushing back. Savannah's smile at the project launch party, my father's pained eyes as he watched me be humiliated, the forged messages, they all cut deep. I felt worthless. The breaking point came on a winter night. The wind cut through my skin. I wandered along the Fremont Bridge, staring down at the dark water below. The city glittered with lights, but inside me there was only darkness. I stood there for a long time, my hands gripping the freezing railing. The thought of ending everything appeared clearly. If I jumped, there would be no more pain, no more memories tormenting me. I took out my phone, intending to delete the last photos as a way of saying goodbye to life. But the screen lit up and the name Maya appeared. Maya, a college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. I hesitated, then answered. "Celeste? Is it really you? Oh my God, I thought I'd never hear your voice again." Maya's voice came through, warm and genuine, like a rope pulling me back. I choked up, trying to swallow my tears. "Maya? I'm in a really bad place. You can't imagine." "Where are you?" "Right now. I'm on the Fremont Bridge." On the other end, I heard her breathing quicken. "Celeste, listen to me. Don't do anything foolish. Stay right there. I'm coming." I let out a bitter laugh. "Maya, don't. So late." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She cut me off firmly. "You were there for me when I fell apart. Now it's my turn. Don't move." I lowered the phone, my hand trembling. The wind still blew, the water still churned beneath the bridge, but that voice kept me from taking another step. About half an hour later, a car stopped at the end of the bridge. Maya ran toward me, wearing a long sweater, her hair tangled from the wind. She wrapped her arms around me without asking anything. I buried my head into her shoulder and sobbed like a child. "You have never been alone," she whispered. In that embrace, I knew I still had a reason to keep going. Not because of Daniel, not to prove anything to Savannah, but for myself. And for the people who truly cared about me, like Maya. The first months in Seattle felt like an endless struggle. But eventually I landed a decent job at a small marketing company called Northbridge Creative. The office was in an old building near Fremont, and the air always smelled of roasted coffee and printer ink. It wasn't fancy or slick, but it was full of life. My initial work was simple: answering phones, scheduling meetings, entering data. I remember my first day, sitting at a small desk by the window, an old computer buzzing every time I opened a file. I told myself, at least here no one knows my past. I'm Celeste, the new employee. That was where I met Ruth. She was in her early 50s with speckled gray hair, always wearing a purple wool scarf whether it was hot or cold. Ruth was the only one in the office who smiled at me on the days I could barely force myself to keep going. One afternoon, after hearing me sigh over a difficult client, she set a cup of coffee on my desk and said softly, "Celeste, you don't have to let everything weigh on you like that. I've been where you are, believe me." After a 20-year marriage ended, I thought my life was over too. But then, I learned to stand up again. I looked at her. The sincerity in her eyes made me feel truly seen for the first time. "But how did you get through it?" Ruth sat beside me, her voice gentle. "Therapy. I had a wonderful therapist. She didn't heal me in a day, but she taught me how to hear myself again." That night, I sat by my apartment window, listening to the rain tapping against the ledge. I held the slip of paper Ruth had given me, with the name Dear Margaret Lynn and a phone number. I clutched it for hours before finally dialing. The first time I stepped into the therapy office, I shook like a child. It wasn't cold or clinical as I expected. Bookshelves held novels and poetry. A few green plants soaked up the strips of sunlight. And the chair cushions were soft. Lynn sat across from me, her eyes kind. "Celeste, tell me, who were you before the betrayal?" The question stunned me. I thought she would ask about Daniel, Savannah, the ruined wedding. Instead, she wanted to know about me before all of it. Haltingly, I told her about my younger days. How I had been ambitious, confident, speaking before dozens of clients. How I used to hum softly while cleaning my father's house. At that point, my throat tightened. Lynn nodded and smiled. "You see, that strength never left you. It's only been buried under the pain." The therapy sessions became a space where I could breathe out things I had never dared say. I spoke of the humiliation of being abandoned in front of a crowd, of that night on the Fremont Bridge, of feeling like a worthless shadow. Lynn didn't judge, she listened, then gently asked, "Celeste, without them, how would you rewrite your life?" That question haunted me for weeks. I began jotting things down in a small notebook. Things I wanted to try. Joining a book club, playing piano again, walking along the bay every weekend. Small things, but they reminded me I still had the power to choose. Ruth was the first to pull me out of my shell. One evening she stopped by my desk and said quietly, "Celeste, my book group meets this Friday night. It's women only, we read and then argue passionately. Come. I think they'll like you." I smiled and shook my head but eventually agreed. That evening, I settled into the cozy living room of a suburban house, listening to 8 women of different ages discuss a novel. At first I stayed silent. But when one woman asked, "Celeste, do you think the main character really found herself again?" I spoke up. My voice trembled, but it was clear. After the meeting, I went home and realized I had spent 3 hours without thinking about Daniel or Savannah. For the first time in months, my mind felt free. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of things from home, I found an old envelope. The handwriting was my father's. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside he had written, "Celeste, I know what you've been through. But I believe one day you will find your laughter again. Don't live to repay someone else's pain. Live a life you write for yourself." I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest, tears streaming. My father was gone, but he had left me a guiding light. From that day I began to change. I woke up earlier, walked around Green Lake, and wrote down 3 things I was grateful for each day. I didn't avoid mirrors anymore. And when I looked into my reflection, I saw someone slowly rewriting her life as my father had wished. Life at Northbridge Creative gradually pulled me back into rhythm. I did more than administrative work, eventually joining real projects and being trusted to manage clients. One chilly October morning, with Seattle drizzle outside the window, Janet, the team lead, walked into the office and handed me a thick file. "Celeste, this is a new client. A fairly well-known travel consulting company, Monroe Consulting. They need a marketing campaign for their hotel and resort division. You'll be the lead from now on. I stared at her, nervous and curious. Monroe Consulting, the name sounded familiar. Opening the folder, I found a photo of a man clipped inside. Ethan Monroe, founder, president, and the heart of the company. The first day Ethan walked into the office, time seemed to slow. He wasn't imposing like Daniel once was, but carried a calm steadiness. A simple navy sweater, an old leather watch, warm gray eyes, and a natural smile. He shook everyone's hand. When he got to me, he smiled and said, "Celeste, I'm really looking forward to working with you. I hear you're the one who keeps everything running smoothly around here." His words surprised me. Daniel had never paid attention to details like that. Daniel always talked about big success and reputation, but never acknowledged the small things that made things solid. During the meeting, Ethan didn't boast about his achievements. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions and listened to my answers and the team's. When I suggested focusing on the emotion of feeling at home in hotels, he nodded slowly, jotting it down in his notebook. "I like the way you think," he said, his eyes lighting with genuine interest. "Customers don't buy a service. They want to feel welcomed, understood. That idea fits perfectly with what I'm aiming for." The compliment made me blush. It had been so long since my voice had felt truly valued. In the weeks that followed, we worked closely. Ethan always arrived a few minutes early and always brought an extra coffee. "I'm not sure what you like, but I figure anyone working in the morning needs caffeine." I laughed as he handed me a vanilla latte, the exact kind I loved most. Gradually, our work conversations drifted into personal ones. He told me about his childhood in Portland, about his aging mother living alone who depended on him. I shared stories about rainy days in Seattle, about the book club Ruth had dragged me into. Ethan listened intently, never interrupting, occasionally asking small questions that made me feel truly seen. One Friday afternoon, after a meeting ended, he hesitated at the door. "Celeste, I know this might be personal, but would you like to have dinner? No work talk. Just to talk." I paused. The scars from Daniel made me cautious. But Ethan's eyes were so sincere that I couldn't bring myself to say no. "All right." We went to a small restaurant in Fremont, a place lit with warm yellow lights and the scent of wood-fired pizza. He placed a bouquet of white tulips in front of me. "I heard you mention tulips in last week's meeting. I thought, maybe this would make you happy." I held the flowers, speechless with surprise. It was a kind of attentiveness I had never received before. Evenings like that continued. Walking around Green Lake, drinking coffee at little sidewalk shops, sitting on park benches talking about our favorite books. I began to realize my heart no longer felt as heavy as before. After 2 years, we were married. A simple wedding on an Oregon beach, surrounded by close friends, with Ruth as my bridesmaid. While placing the ring on my finger, Ethan looked into my eyes and whispered, "Celeste, you don't need to prove anything to the world anymore. Just being yourself, with me, is enough." Tears streamed down my face, but this time not from pain but from happiness. We built a small but fulfilling life in Seattle. I had a stable job. He continued expanding his company, yet always made time for family. I thought I had finally closed the past. Until one evening, while reviewing client files, I happened to see the name Carter Enterprises, Daniel's company, which had once been a direct competitor to Monroe Consulting in a major travel deal. My heart pounded as I looked at Ethan. "You once went up against Daniel?" He set down his wineglass, his expression calm. "Yes. Years ago, we competed for a large coastal hotel contract. Daniel bid very high but without realistic plans. I proposed a more sustainable solution. I won. He lost out on millions of dollars in profit. The world spun. The man who had taken everything from me had been defeated by the very man I was now married to. Was it fate, or life's delayed gift? Ethan took my hand, squeezing gently. "Celeste, I don't care who he is. I only care about you and the life we're building. Don't let the past interfere." I nodded, though deep down I knew destiny's wheel wasn't done turning. One day the past would return, even if I didn't want it to. My father's funeral was held in an old church in Oregon. The sky was gloomy, misty rain falling on gray rooftops. The organ played slowly, every farewell heavy and solemn. I stood alone beside the casket, my hand resting on the cold wood, as if trying to hold on to a final bit of warmth from the man who had always believed in and protected me. Just then Savannah approached. She wore a tight black Chanel dress, pearl earrings shining, her red lips curved in a proud smile. She tilted her head, lowering her voice enough for nearby relatives to hear. "What a pity, Celeste, nearly 40 and still alone. Meanwhile, I have a husband, a mansion, everything." Her words stabbed into my chest. I heard whispers nearby, felt curious eyes turning toward me. I took a deep breath, my heart racing, but my face stayed calm. "Savannah," I said slowly, "have you met my husband?" She froze, her smile turning stiff. I tilted my head slightly and Ethan stepped out from behind the pews. Steady stride, simple suit, unmistakable confidence. For a moment, all sound seemed to vanish. I watched Savannah's face change. Her victorious smile disappeared, replaced by panic. Her hands trembled, the diamond bracelet on her wrist quivering under the church lights. At a distance, Daniel Carter, once my fiancé, stood motionless. His usual arrogant expression drained away, his eyes wide with what looked like a nightmare. Ethan walked to my side, his arm naturally around my back. He nodded politely at Savannah and Daniel. "Hello. I'm Ethan Monroe." The atmosphere shifted. Guests who had been focused on the prayers now turned to look at us. Whispers spread like wind through dry grass. Wasn't Savannah the one who stole Daniel from Celeste? But now look. Celeste married Ethan Monroe. Monroe Consulting is famous around here. Daniel lost the Pacific Coast contract to Monroe, didn't he? I heard every word and saw Savannah's color shift from red to white. She tried to compose herself, lips trembling. "Celeste. I didn't know that you..." I cut her off, my voice calm but loud enough for nearby guests. "That's right. I'm not alone. I'm married. And I'm very happy." Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight. His voice was hoarse. "Monroe, I never expected to see you here." Ethan turned slightly toward him, offering a faint smile, though his eyes were sharp. "Small world, Carter. And unfortunately, I don't think we're done being rivals yet." The simple sentence shocked those nearby. I saw Mr. Robert Hale, one of my father's old business partners, raise his eyebrows meaningfully at others. More whispers began, and soon the whole church was buzzing with speculation. Savannah struggled to keep her posture, but her voice shook as she asked me, "Why didn't you ever say anything? Why did you hide all of this?" "Because I don't need to boast." Her body seemed to collapse inward. The insults she had once whispered at me were now choking her own throat. The murmuring crowd grew louder. A middle-aged woman whispered, "Savannah brags about her mansion and husband, but looks like Celeste is the one truly happy. Yes, just look at Ethan. The way he stands beside her. That's real love." Daniel appeared unable to control himself. He stepped forward, anger flashing. "Celeste, what is this? You're trying to humiliate me in front of everyone." "Daniel, for me to humiliate you, I'd still have to care. And I don't care at all." The words struck like a hammer. His shoulders twitched, eyes blinking rapidly. He had no response. Ethan's hand pressed gently against my back, silently saying, "I'm here." I lifted my gaze to him, warmth spreading into a true smile, different from the forced ones in my past. Savannah looked away, unable to hide her pale face. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape in the suffocating room. But no one was admiring her sparkle anymore. Every gaze had shifted, to me and Ethan. The church hummed with whispers and spreading stories. I saw stunned looks from old relatives, Aunt Margaret squeezing her rosary, lips moving in prayer. In that heavy moment, Mr. Robert Hale took a step forward. Dressed in a simple gray suit, his eyes sharp with worldly insight. "I remember hearing Daniel was knocked out of the Pacific Coast Resorts deal," he said calmly. "And the winner was Monroe Consulting. Seems today we all learn the truth. Quite a coincidence, or shall we call it destiny?" The volume of whispers rose. People in the back rows leaned forward for a better look. I saw my father's old friends exchanging amused glances, some even smirking. Savannah grabbed Daniel's arm and whispered frantically, "Enough, Daniel, stop it." But he yanked his arm free, his last bit of control crumbling. "You people don't understand anything," Daniel shouted. "Celeste has always been jealous of me and Savannah. He wants to shame us. She never knew how to keep a man." His voice rang against the high ceiling, echoing harshly. I felt a mix of pity and contempt from the crowd turning toward me. I took a breath, steadying myself. Daniel, you're revealing your own truth. I don't have to shame you, you're doing it yourself. Savannah trembled, trying to intervene. Celeste, please. Don't say that. Everyone is misunderstanding. Daniel's only upset. Robert gave a dry chuckle and shook his head. No one is misunderstanding anything, Savannah. Business is harsh and we all know Monroe beat him fair and square. As for your personal matters, he paused, scanning them, you should know when and where to preserve your dignity. Those words were the final blow. Savannah bowed her head, lips pressed so hard they turned white. Daniel looked around, but no one stepped forward. Former colleagues and friends avoided his gaze, unwilling to be associated. I felt Ethan's steady hand on my back. He didn't need to speak, his presence gave me strength. I raised my chin and looked Daniel straight in the eye. You think my world revolves around you, I said slowly, but the truth is, you're just an old chapter. I closed that long ago. If today you feel humiliated, that's because of your own choices, not mine. Soft sighs swept across a few rows. Someone murmured behind me, we reap what we sow. Daniel stepped back, shoulders slumping. For the first time I saw not arrogance but bitter defeat in his eyes. Savannah still held his arm, but even she looked shaken, as if she couldn't believe the ending she now shared. I said nothing more. Everything was already clear. From that moment on, Daniel and Savannah would never look the same to anyone watching. 3 days after the funeral, I heard a soft knock at the door. When I opened it, I was momentarily stunned. The woman standing in front of me was Savannah, but no longer the elegant figure she used to be. She wore faded jeans, an oversized gray sweater, her blonde hair messy and hurriedly tied back, her face pale and makeup-free. Her eyes were swollen, deep dark circles making her look at least a decade older. Celeste. Her voice was hoarse, almost breaking. Can I come in? Part of me wanted to close the door and tell her I no longer had anything to do with her world. But I remembered our childhood, the two of us drawing under the porch, whispering at night before we fell asleep. I silently stepped aside to let her in. Savannah looked around the apartment. She sighed softly, her eyes distant. I used to think you leaving meant failure. But now maybe you found the right path. I poured her a glass of water, and her hands trembled so badly the water rippled against the rim. What's going on, Savannah? I asked quietly. She laughed, but the sound was bitter and dry. Everything is collapsing, Celeste. Everything I was proud of was just an illusion. Her voice shook as she explained. Daniel had borrowed money everywhere to maintain their luxurious lifestyle. The mansion she once flaunted was heavily mortgaged. The luxury cars in the garage were leased. Her dazzling jewelry collection, mostly bought on credit from a jeweler, was now being pursued by creditors. He put everything under my name, Savannah sobbed. The debts, the contracts, even the credit cards. I signed without reading, thinking he loved me, that he'd protect me. Now, the bank is sending notices to seize the mansion. I have nothing left. Before me, the woman once radiant in designer dresses, once proudly declaring she had everything, was now curled up like a lost child. But that wasn't all. Her voice cracked, and the worst. Daniel has someone else. A young assistant at the company. He takes her on business trips, to dinners even. I found messages on his phone. The exact words he once wrote to you. A chill ran through me, not from surprise but from the cruel irony. History was repeating itself, only this time Savannah was the one being betrayed. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing, I stole Daniel from you. I thought I'd won, thought I was happy. But it turns out, I've just followed your footsteps, only in a far more tragic way. I felt no triumph nor the rage I once imagined. Instead, a faint sadness, for her and for the woman I once was. Celeste, why? Why didn't you ever fight back? Why did you let me destroy you, take everything and still stay silent? I waited for you to retaliate, to expose me. But you did nothing. Her question split the air open. I let the ticking of the wall clock fill the silence. I thought of sleepless nights, of that moment on the Fremont Bridge, of my father's letter. I owed her an answer, but I knew it couldn't be simple. Maybe because I didn't want to become like you. You chose that path and now you're paying the price. I chose to leave. I chose to rebuild. She bowed her head, tears dripping onto the wooden table, spreading into dark stains. I opened my father's old journal. The yellowed pages still carried a fading ink scent that reminded me of him. The shaky yet steady handwriting appeared before my eyes as if he were there with us, sighing at his two daughters who once turned their backs on each other. Savannah sat across from me, her eyes swollen, her hair disheveled. She reached to lightly touch the book, her voice raspy. "Do you remember when Dad wrote this journal?" I never paid attention, until now when I've lost everything. I closed the book, holding it tightly. Dad didn't write for the past. He wrote for the future. He believed we would learn something no matter how late. Learn what? I've lost everything. The house, the money, Daniel. It's all ashes. I'm like a beggar knocking on your door. You didn't destroy my life. You only broke it apart. But from that ruin I found my real path. Maybe that's the lesson Dad wanted us to understand. I never thought you could say these things. I always thought you stayed silent because you were weak. I smiled gently, calm. Silence is a choice too. But silence doesn't mean surrender. The kitchen filled with stillness. Outside, the late afternoon light poured through the window, spreading across Savannah's worn face, making her look like both a stranger and the little sister I once knew. I placed my hand over hers, a gesture I had avoided for years. No one is born worthy or unworthy. We become worthy by changing. Savannah broke down again, her sobs echoing through the apartment. I've lost everything, Celeste. But I don't want to lose you. I don't know if there's still a chance. Chance isn't for reclaiming what's gone. It's for starting differently. Her eyes were blurred with tears, but I saw a faint light flickering there, weak yet real. Perhaps she finally understood what true regret meant. And perhaps for the first time I allowed myself to build a fragile bridge for us both to cross. Healing doesn't come in a night. But in that moment, as the clock ticked and our breathing filled the space, I knew one thing. The past can't be erased, but it can become the first brick to build a new bridge. Savannah whispered, as if making a vow to herself, "I'll try, Celeste. I won't ask for forgiveness. But I'll try to start over, to be worthy of Dad and maybe of you too." I saw once more a lost little sister fumbling her way back home. That evening I sat on the porch with Ethan. The last rays of sunlight stretched gold across the garden trees. I held my father's old diary, its pages yellowed, still carrying his familiar ink scent. I turned to the final page where firm but slightly trembling words appeared. "True victory isn't defeating others but finding yourself again. If one day my daughter understands this, I believe she will be happy." I read the sentence over and over as if each word soaked into my heart. A gentle breeze swept the porch, making the page flutter as if it breathed with me. I smiled, laid my hand on the words and whispered, "Not for him anymore but for myself. I don't need to win against Savannah or Daniel. I only need to find myself. And I have." Ethan stayed silent, his eyes looking into the distance, giving me space. He didn't interrupt. He placed his warm hand over mine, a quiet but complete gesture. Looking at my father's handwriting, I realized he wasn't writing only for himself, but for us, his daughters who had once lost their way. Savannah learned the value of remorse through pain, while I discovered strength through ruin. I closed the diary, holding it like a part of my memory. I thought of my father, a man who never raised his voice, yet each word and action of his carried the deepest lessons. I could almost hear him in the evening breeze saying, "My daughter, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to live true to yourself." Ethan gently pulled me to rest my head on his shoulder. We sat that way for a long time, watching the sunset fade. Children's laughter from next door, a dog barking in the distance. Everything felt so beautifully ordinary. I once thought peace was unreachable, yet now it was here. Simple, warm, unassuming. I whispered, there was a time I believed I had lost everything. But now I understand. When we lose what wasn't real, only then do we have space to receive what truly belongs to us. Ethan squeezed my hand, and I believe this is just the beginning. You've walked through the darkness, so you know how to treasure the light. The diary in my hand wasn't just a keepsake. It was a guiding lantern. My father was right. In the end, it isn't about defeating anyone. It's about conquering yourself. Outside, the evening lights flickered to life. I looked up at the deep violet sky and saw a faint glow, like a reminder that from ashes, life can rise again. Every family has shadows and pain that's hard to name. But I believe the way we choose to face and move forward is what truly defines who we are. What about you? If you were in this situation, how would you move forward? Cling to the wound or let go so you can be reborn? Share your thoughts below. Sometimes one person's story can be another's anchor. And if you want to hear more family stories of loss, betrayal, but also healing and rebirth, don't forget to follow the channel. Many more stories await you in the next episodes.